What I have in front of me is a file folder, but really what I want this to be, it's my computer. And inside my computer are lots and lots of folders. And these folders have photographs and movies and music and my bills that I gotta pay and a blueprint of my house. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff inside this hard drive that is my computer. And there's a lot of stuff on here that I may or may not want to share with other people. So what I need to do is create a methodology that prevents other people from getting to this, but on the same token allows people that I do want to have some level of access to be able to get to stuff. And that's the whole idea of what we call user accounts in Windows. When you walk up to a Windows machine, you need to type in a username and a password. This username and password opens the computer and then provides me some access to all the chocolatey goodness that is the inside of my computer, the resources of my computer. So a user account gets us into the computer and we call that authentication. Now, that's great, but if you look at the stuff inside my computer, right here I got movies inside this folder. This is a diagram of the electrical system of my house. Here's some paintings I've drawn. So I've got things in here that I want people to see or not see, but at different levels. For example, these movies that I have, I want people to be able to access my computer and watch a movie, but I don't want people adding movies, because all my movies are very legal, of course, so I don't want people adding movies to my movie folder. Or if I want them to look at the pictures that I've drawn, that's great, but I don't want them to paint mustaches all over my nice pictures and mess them up. But then on other cases, like for example, I've got a folder here that's got information on what's happening in my house. For example, I've got a spreadsheet for paying the bills, things like that. And in that case, I want people, my roommates in particular, to be able to access this spreadsheet. And if they pay the electric bill, I want them to add that and things like that. So it's not just a matter of giving somebody access to folders. You also have to define how you want them to have access. And that's the cornerstone of the NTFS. NTFS, or NT File System, has been around for 20 years. It's probably going to be around for another 20. And it's a file system that was designed from the ground up to show how we can access the resources of our computer, primarily folders more than anything else. So we've got a two-step process. We've got authentication, which in essence opens the lid to our computer and gives us our own desktop. And then we have authorization, which defines what we can do on a folder-by-folder basis. All right, so in order to understand these two concepts, we need to get into the idea of what I call user accounts. Now, to understand user accounts, let's use gummy bears. So what I've got here is a bunch of gummy bears, and I'm going to pick one particular gummy bear right here. I don't know why they call them gummy bears, because they always look like Easter Island statues to me. But anyway, so this is going to be a user account. A user account on a Windows system consists of a username and some kind of password. All this information is normally stored within the registry itself. The password's encrypted, so you can't open the registry and read people's passwords. But it has a username and password. You must have a username and password stored on that computer to give you access to the resources of that computer. Now, that works great, but we run into a problem, and what I want to do is go back to my folder for just a minute. And just because the user account logs us in, well, we have all kinds of issues here. Well, for example, I have certain people who I want to have access to my movies. Not only some of my roommates, but friends who come by, that type of thing. And they can actually log into my computer and have access. But then I have another friend of mine who buys movies, and I want him to add movies into that folder. So we've got different levels of access. So you've got a choice here. For every different little user account you've got, you can start setting what we call NTFS permissions for each one of these accounts. Now that's fine, but what if this dear friend of mine decides to move to Salt Lake City? Well, now I'm going to have to make changes on that account, delete the account, things like that. But we can do something that's much cooler. And let's get back to some gummy bears and I'll show you what I mean. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to make a container, and I'm going to assign NTFS permissions to this container. We call this a group. There's nothing physical about a group. It's just an organization method that we say anybody who's a member of the movie contributors group can add movies to the movies folder. I can have another group, which is just going to be the movie watchers group, and they can only read that stuff. So then what I do is I assign permissions to these different groups, and then I simply start adding users to whatever group is appropriate for whatever they're allowed to do. By using groups instead of user accounts to assign NTFS permissions, life's a lot easier. As a matter of fact, this entire process can be incredibly complicated, and over the years, Windows has worked really hard through things like simple file sharing and home groups and all kinds of different things to simplify this process. The important thing to understand is that every version of Windows on the A+ exam completely has this capability of configuring NTFS. Make sure you understand the difference between users and groups and how they're applied for authentication, authorization, and permissions.